In this video, we're going to create a bubble map. So data visualization tool where different size circles tell us about a quantity of a particular variable in our data. And the graph that you can see here is the standard example from Plotly, one of the organizations that creates bubble maps. And here you can see they're putting data onto a US map. Well, we're going to put some data on a much smaller region, just in the town that we're in, to see where your instructors where they go shopping. So what we did is that around Christmas time, asked all the faculty in the Donald School of Business Science and Computing where they were going on their shopping trips, and we collected all that information. And we showed them how to collect longitude and latitude from Google Maps. And so just a reminder, if you didn't catch it in the previous video, is that you can go in and on Google Maps, if you right click on a location here, like Red Deer Polytechnic, you can collect the longitude and latitude. And so we did is we took all of this information, copied, pasted it into an Excel spreadsheet, and separated this into longitude and latitude columns. We also asked the faculty to name the location they were going to as well. And so what we did is created a table, which we're about to see in a minute, that had different shops in town, the longitude and latitude for that shop, and then we collected how many faculty were going to different locations. So in our analysis right now, we're going to look at where do most of the faculty go when they go out shopping. All right, so we're working here. If you're following along with us, we are in the drstephpowers.github.io/BIA, and we are here in reality mining. So click here, it goes into GitHub, that opens, has a button where you can open into Google Colab, save a copy, and that way you can edit the code as well. You'll also find in that GitHub a number of the files that we use, including in this case, we are going to be using that file that we just talked about, which is the data from the Red Deer Polytechnic Donald School of Business Science and Computing faculty. All right, so how to do this. You need this file called reality that you'll find in GitHub, and let us then, once you've saved a copy of this Python workbook to your Google Drive, you will then need to link it to your Google Drive and put this file into your Google Drive. So then we need to link the Python workbook and our Python workbook and our file to each other. So we of course are going to map to our own drive. This then connects your workbook to your drive, doesn't give access to anybody else. We're then going to import pandas as PD and import folium. Folium is what we're going to use for plotting our map. And pandas so that we can import it. So we're importing trip. It is an Excel file. And in my case, I have put it in a folder in my Google Drive called BIBA Handbook, and a folder inside that called Chapter 7. So if you're putting yours in a different location, trade this part out for where you're putting your file. Okay, we do it this way rather than just linking you to a URL so that you can then in the future take your own files and analyze them in your Google Colab. All right, so we port in our data, and if we just look at the first 5 rows of it, we see here's the business name and the latitude and the longitude, and then the number of people who went to those particular locations. Now we're going to create a bubble map, and the bubble map is going to have bigger bubbles for places where more people visit. So we can look at how many different places people go when we zoom out and look at all the bubbles. We can also see which areas are most frequented. So let's take a look. We're going to create our folium map, and this is just like we saw in the previous videos, which is we specify a centralized location where the map needs to start, because the map can zoom in and zoom out, so it needs a starting location. And the typical starting location is just to take the average latitude and average longitude and use that as the starting point. And then we can have here, we're going to have, this is the type of map we're looking at. And there are other types, so, you feel free to Google them and find the other ones. But it's just a basic map here. We didn't specify in this particular map the level of zoom. So you can see when we look at this one here, and I've just called M so you can see the empty map to start. You can see that because it centers here on Red Deer, it is still quite zoomed out. We can change the level of that zoom to start, and we will do that in just a moment. All right, so now let's populate this. So what are we going to do? We're going to do our folium map. We're going to change the tile here actually to open street map to get a bit more detail at the city level. And we are going to put a zoom start at 12. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we are going to specify different size bubbles based on the number of visitors. And so here we're going to do is kind of have a couple different categories. If less than 2 people went to one location, then we're going to do a radius of 2. If less than 5, 5. If less than 10, 10. So we're setting up kind of these different sizes because this data here is very small, and we're just bracketing it because we don't need incrementally different bubbles, and we don't want all the bubbles to be the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a loop where it is going to add our little circle markers, and it's going to add them based on the latitude and longitude in our data. And we are looping through the different index values. So that's for the I, and we're iterating through those rows. And we are going to have the radius, the size of the bubble, be based on the number of visits. Okay. And we're going to take those number of visits, and then we're going to apply this function here about the size of the radius based on them. So grouping them together rather than having a true scale, a continuous scale. We can set the color for the bubbles. If you want a different color than red, you could trade it out right here. We're going to fill the bubbles in, and we're going to fill them in with the same color. So that's these last pieces here, and we're going to add that to our map. So what you see here is already you can see that the map is a different kind. This is the open street map. It's got the roads on it, whereas the other one, if we go back, is often used when we're looking at data that is state specific or city specific. When we're quite zoomed out, you don't need all the roads and clutter with this one here. But it doesn't really matter. You can use any of them. All right, so here we can see this is at, what did we set it at? We set it at a zoom start of 12. So you can see at a zoom start of 12, we can see the whole town. And we can see, you know, bigger bubbles where more people go. Here's Red Deer Polytechnic, and there were more people there. Most people were at Costco, which is down here. So our biggest bubble should actually be Costco. So the cool thing about these graphs is that you can zoom in and out. So we can see some people went to these locations. I don't know what's there. Something in Lacombe. And we can also zoom in. So then if we go and look at particular areas, we can then see the different size of the bubbles. So it looks like a lot of our faculty are doing shopping not too far from work based on what we see here. And then we have some just outside of town. So we can use our bubble map to show how much is happening in different locations. And the great thing about these folium maps is you can zoom in and you can zoom out to see what is happening.